Autodesk and Esri and SBS, the partnership to know about. So good morning and welcome to the session. As Mark mentioned, my name is Eric Chappelle and my role is an AEC solutions advisor and I work for Autodesk. I've been with Autodesk for about 7 years, but I've been working with Autodesk solutions for nearly 3 decades. In my current role, I help Autodesk utility customers understand how to get the most out of our technology to get more done and to do better work in less time. I'm honored to introduce Matt Piper and Dennis Beck, who will be joining me in today's presentation, and we've got others as well who I'll introduce you to later. Matt, why don't you tell us about what you do at Esri?
Hi everyone, and thanks Eric. As Eric mentioned, my name is Matt Piper, and I'm the Global Director for Industry Solutions for Utilities, Water, and AEC at Esri. So a quick background on myself. For the majority of my career, I worked as an engineer in a large utility in Australia, if you didn't pick up the accent. But almost 3 years ago, I moved over to California to work at Esri. And we've been working with Autodesk, a lot recently, more and more as people start evolving, this capability that we have. And it's a lot of the strategic alliance has been predominantly around, I guess, our AEC workflows and applications. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to start discussing how, the Autodesk and Esri partnership is bringing to life some of the workflows around utilities, and more specifically in the substation design space. And speaking of the substation design space, we're also joined by another Esri partner today in SBS. So I'm going to hand it over now to Dennis to introduce yourself. Dennis?
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Eric. Yes, I've spoken to a number of you quite a few times over these conferences, but I'm really honored to be here with our partners, Autodesk and Esri. So as you know, our technology substation design suite works on top of the Autodesk platform. But what you didn't know is that we are also an Esri partner, and we have quite extensive integration into the world of GIS and Esri technology specifically. So I have been working in this community, this spatial integration utility since the 80s, believe it or not. And I'm also a registered engineer. So this stuff gets us kind of excited, all the opportunities we have to make new exciting things that we had kind of had a vision about already over 20 years ago are really starting to happen now. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be sharing with you this morning. So Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dennis. So we're going to take turns actually talking about these integrations that our companies have developed. And I'll start off by talking about them from Autodesk's perspective and first looking at the Autodesk and Esri partnership and integrations. Interest in integrating GIS and BIM has been on the rise for quite some time now. And the reason is that BIM information is a great data source for operations and maintenance. And when you place it in the context afforded by GIS data, it becomes exponentially more valuable. And organizations are understanding that there's importance of giving more people access to the information necessary to do their jobs. And that includes both BIM and GIS. And, in my experience, in my many years in different industries, we typically are siloed where we've got our CAD and BIM folks who kind of don't get a lot of access to GIS, and likewise on the GIS side. And we aim to change that and give both sides access to all of that information simultaneously. Now, currently, the way project teams work with GIS and BIM is typically manual and one-directional. At project handover, CAD and/or BIM data will be given to a GIS specialist, and he or she will use it to manually update the GIS. And as you can guess, this process is pretty inefficient and it's subject to mistakes and data loss. And also, almost as soon as the GIS is updated, it becomes outdated because things on the ground change so quickly and new data is becoming available almost daily. Here at Autodesk, we're all about putting data at the center. And we've learned that smarter decisions and better outcomes happen with this approach. And by bringing GIS and BIM data together, project teams benefit from frictionless live and native data flow between the platforms. So this helps to reduce risk and inefficiencies and data loss. And Autodesk and Esri have been collaborating for several years on this approach now. We want to put both of our data sources at the center of our project teams. And this has led to integrations in both of our products. For example, our integrations allow design teams on the design side to build more robust existing condition models for planning, preliminary engineering, and design. While on the other side of the house, we're allowing GIS teams to have direct intuitive access to BIM data to build robust asset management systems. Now, traditionally, we think of GIS as managing capital portfolios, such as asset management and master planning and permitting, while BIM is thought of for delivering projects with activities like project planning, design, and that one-way handover process we talked about earlier. Together, Autodesk and Esri see the benefits of bringing the two together because, in essence, GIS informs BIM and BIM in turn fuels GIS, if you think about it. Just imagine taking an infrastructure asset like a substation, for instance, and easily putting it in a larger contextual environment. This is going to enable better informed decisions, accelerated project timelines, reduced costs, and lots of other benefits. Plus, it creates a cycle that improves outcomes. Using integrated GIS and BIM optimizes the performance of assets within systems, which feeds back into the ongoing planning of new projects again and again. Now let's talk about integrations between Autodesk and SBS. Kind of a different model because we have a tight and close developer partnership with SBS, and their products are built on Autodesk technology. For example, Automated Utility Design, AUD, has AutoCAD at its core, while Substation Design Suite has Autodesk Inventor. These products also integrate with Autodesk Vault for data management. So for that reason, our solutions are naturally tightly integrated, and SBS can produce files and models that can be directly opened and edited with Autodesk products and vice versa. And we'll be actually showing that shortly. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt now to talk about some of these integrations from the perspective of Esri. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I really like the way that the plan, design, build, and operate workflows, was laid out there, because I think that's directly applicable to utility audiences as well as utilities. And from our experience, I'm sure you're aware that utilities are more than aware of the importance and the value of those data sets. Can we go to the next slide? And this is where I want to begin today as well and discuss the role that a modern GIS plays in managing a utilities data. And you can see from this image on the screen that users are integrating every type and every format of data. And it doesn't really matter whether it's tabular or real time or imagery data. And this data can also be big data or unstructured data. And it's quite often now not even owned by that utility. So what GIS does is it works to create a common reference system, a common language, if you will, to bring all this data together. And what's more, it's also making this data available as ready-to-use services and bring it to life in the form of things like web maps or layers or 3D scenes. Next. So I want to start the story today with a sort of an evolution about how we see Esri and Substation design coming together. And it really is integrating and evolving. For many years, I've worked in asset management at a power company, and I'm all too familiar with how, there's different applications that are used by the designing, maintaining the substations as compared to how you design and manage the lines distribution component of your network. In fact, for what we'd see is we'd have completely different departments with completely different processes and applications. And a lot of this separation has stemmed from previous GIS systems not being able to adequately model the assets that existed inside the substation fence, if you know what I mean. So on the screen, you see a typical representation of what this looked like. So a substation would just be a single dot on a map, and placing 500 assets on that single location, it just wasn't practical for the end user, and it really didn't add much value to be using the GIS as a way of managing. But if we move this slide along, the capability of a modern GIS has fundamentally changed what now can be modeled inside that substation fence. And a few years ago, Esri released the next generation data management modeling capability, which is known as the ArcGIS Utility Network. And the combination of the utility network with ArcGIS Pro allows a truly spatial, accurate representation of the substation design in 2D and in 3D. It shows the assets, the connectivity, it lays out your schematics, and it's even possible to show data at a granularity to go way down detailed inside the terminals of each asset and all their associations. And this same data can now be used to show, as you can see in the top, a simple context in 3D by adding in topography and base layers as needed. But the final step, if you transition through, is where we begin to extend the story. Right? This is where the Esri and Autodesk partnership comes to life. You see, GIS now provides you with the ability to see the assets as they appear in the real world. You can follow feeders from all the way out in the distribution line back to your substation. And now, using the Esri and Autodesk integration, we can start bringing these designs to life in 3D and proceeding context to the real world. This not only allows us to see the design in context to the surroundings, but you can also interact and toggle on layers and look at the different phases of the construction plans. This creates a whole new experience for GIS users and works for assets both above the ground and below the ground. One of the things I personally like is that it also honors all the attributes of your design. So users can select the assets, they can see the associated details. Once again, you can do this above and below the ground. And what you're seeing now is that the two technologies coming together to greatly streamline many of these business substation and design workflows. It's really exciting stuff. So we move to the next slide. What we have here is a simple example showing that the work that can be done to bring these applications together. So Autodesk has created connectors for Civil 3D and from InfraWorks showing bi-directional connections. The result is that Autodesk solutions for engineering and design are now connected with Esri's ArcGIS Online and Enterprise solutions. In addition, our work together has led to significant improvements in the way that we bring in Revit files through ArcGIS Pro. And that's what you just saw before in that 3D scene. And most recently, we're bringing in Civil 3D drawings in a way that is much more powerful, as we are now able to bring in the object, the attributes, and understand that Civil 3D BIM data in the GIS. But it doesn't stop there. If we just look at the next slide, we can see what's coming in 2021 is a new offering, which is called ArcGIS GeoBIM. And this creates a cloud-to-cloud connection between our two companies. So with ArcGIS BIM, users will have a direct connection between our two cloud platforms, opening the door for many powerful collaborations and productivity workflows. So the next slide, we're just going to cover off the integration that Esri has with our partner SBS as well. So as I said, SBS is a partner of Esri, and they've extended the core capability to further streamline the design process as it relates to that utility network I discussed, and then all the associated analytics and insights. So much of what our customers are asking for is about understanding the network, and more we are seeing customers look to understanding it through 3D representations or this digital twin of what they see in the real world. So I'm going to hand it over now to Dennis, who's going to take us through some more details of the SBS capabilities. Over to you, Dennis.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that introduction. So I think you've set the stage really well. And of course, we're working in the trenches, obviously, with all the aspects of design and such. Eric, if you could provide the next slide, please. So a little bit, you understand how this all works together with the Autodesk technologies, but I want to get into a little more detail of how the new technologies that we're releasing for SDS Physical for AutoCAD, based on our AUD platform, work within an Esri environment. So if you look at Esri and ArcGIS Enterprise, the actual substation design, in addition to working directly with the Autodesk technology, can live in right within the ArcGIS environment. So what that means is all those rich data sources that you just saw Matt present become available right away to the designers. And the nice thing about it is the designer does not need to know that they're accessing a GIS. With that service-based integration, all that information just becomes available. And of course, with the data and with the power of GIS, then becomes the ability to do all the analysis. So if you need to query the network, if you need to understand customers impacted, those kinds of things, all that becomes available to the designer. It becomes very powerful from an efficiency standpoint, but it's just a really effective way to manage data too, as Eric had said, keeping data at the center of everything we're trying to do. And of course, because we're running on an Autodesk platform, we have all the ability to do model-based design. And then coming out of this, very critical is also the ability to have the appropriate security and the support for it. So, so that said, if I could get the next slide there, Eric. And then the big question is, what does that mean for me? Well, once this information is available, it really opens up the door to a lot of things. And when Autodesk and Esri really put this strategic partnership together, I know a lot of the interest was really around smart cities and the urbanization that's happening globally. But from a utility standpoint, what this means is that the data you have becomes very current and it becomes very rich and supports operational activities, which means dynamic networks and smart grid and those kinds of advanced network applications all will have a robust data representation that can really support taking the utility business to the next level and enabling modernization. Coming out of this from this whole community, you've seen a lot about BIM. Esri has a very robust set of mobile capabilities. All that gets much more enabled. And when we start looking at the benefits of intelligent design and 3D modeling, which is what this session is all about, it really means now taking better designs out to the field, having better construction. And that's where a lot of the justification comes. I mean, if you can just shave a few percentage points off of construction costs, if you can get your spend in earlier, you're making dramatic changes into the financial performance of your utility organizations. And then just some really interesting things too. This slide actually comes from one of your utilities, and it's using sample data, so nothing's being compromised there. But there's always a big queue of pre-planned design work and those kinds of activities. We've just taken an example here of designs that have been done, planned for construction in 2+ years out. And all of a sudden you have a pretty dynamic environment in terms of supporting long-term engineering planning for your system. In addition to better construction, you can have better longer-term engineering. Of course, the better you engineer, the better your information is available. Then you can really start longer-term asset strategies, which has always been a tremendous vision from all the utility executives that I speak with. They really want to have that information to enable the best return on assets. So we're opening the doors for a lot of exciting things with this partnership, and we're really pleased to be part of it. So, and with that, Eric, I'll turn it back over to you.
So now it's time to switch gears a bit and have our demonstration. So at this time, I want to introduce two more important folks in this story, and that's Remy Myers, product manager from Esri, and Chris Ducote, technical consultant from SBS. And I'm actually going to turn over the screen share to Chris, and he's going to kick us off with our demonstration of the integration between our three technologies. So Chris, I'm going to stop my share and you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Eric. Yeah, so my name is Chris Ducote. I've been with SBS for almost 3 years now, but I've spent literally all of my career in the utility industry, working for utilities as well as design firms in substation design specifically. So really excited to just give a high-level overview of this. This is SDS Physical for AutoCAD, what we're looking at here. This is our new product we've been working on. So I'm just going to demonstrate a couple workflows here. This is where we're actually going to put the substation design together. So I've got a couple things left to do here. I need to run a flexible conductor here and a rigid conductor from the switch to that bus support stand. Now you'll see here, I have a bill of material here that this is all model based. So once it's modeled and in the design, it's going to be counted and counted accurately. Now, part of the power of this is we have true connectivity. We have design checks that we can run. So what it's telling me here, it's picking up that there are open ends in the design. It's telling me that there are things that are not connected. So I'm going to go ahead and connect these. So here I'm choosing my flexible conductor. We'll see it's created that conductor for me. Now notice also it's giving me a preview. It's picking up, it knows what it's connecting to. And there we have our connection made. Now this can be done either in 2D or 3D. So I can switch back and forth from a 2D design mode and then back to 3D. Now, one of the powerful things here, and this is going to feed into the rest of this demonstration, is using this platform, we can make it geospatially aware. So if you see at the bottom of my screen here, it's assigned to a coordinate system. So the design knows where it exists on Earth. So as an example here, I'll go ahead and pull in some aerial imagery. So it's really nice to have this integrated right into the product. Now, once I've got my design to a point where I'm ready to begin sharing it into other platforms, and for this demo, what we're doing, we're leveraging BIM 360. What you can see here, I have BIM 360 synced to my desktop here, right? So I'll just go ahead and give that a quick save, and it's going to sync up through BIM 360, and we can go ahead and hand it on to the next presenter.
All right, thanks. That's me. So Chris, if you could stop your share, I will start mine, and we can actually take a look at Chris's design that he was just completing in BIM 360. I'm right here in my Chrome browser in the BIM 360 environment, and I'm navigating and viewing the model. And if I were a project manager or some stakeholder in the project, I could review Chris's design here, maybe make some markups. I've got markup tools right here in BIM 360. I could make comments, I can create issues. There's all kinds of collaboration functionality here right in the BIM 360 platform in the browser. Then switching roles here to say maybe a civil engineer, I can switch over to Civil 3D. And what I've actually done here is XREF'd Chris's DWG right from BIM 360 because of the integration with Autodesk products. And BIM 360, they're all Autodesk. So we're able to open and XREF and interact with files that are stored in the cloud for collaboration. So even though Chris and I are in two different companies and we're in two different parts of the country, he was able to save that drawing up to the cloud, and I was able to XREF it into my civil engineering drawing. Now, while we're talking about integrations, we've got the ability to, because of the SBS tight integration, I can just open Chris's file. But I've also got integrations with Esri that allow me to interact with some of the data on that platform as well. So for example, I can open the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS, and that takes me right into ArcGIS Online, where I can grab any data that I have access to. Now, the folks at Esri were kind enough to supply me with some data to add me to a group, and I can just grab that data and choose how I want to bring it into to Civil 3D. For example, I can grab some buildings and bring those in as Civil 3D feature lines, or some road center lines and bring those in as alignments. and any number of choices. And when I do that, that information comes into Civil 3D and adds that context that I'm looking for. So as I mentioned earlier, we can use that connection, that integration with Esri to build up a much more robust existing conditions model to kick off each project. So now I've combined data from a number of sources. I've got SBS's detailed substation design here. I've got Esri's context in the form of the buildings and roads and whatever else I bring in. Now I'm ready to maybe do some engineering design. So, you know, as a civil engineer, I might take a look at this site and say, you know, it would be nice to grade this out and provide some grading for this. So I have actually already done that. I'm just going to turn it on here and let you see just a simple grading pad that I've created for the substation design. So now this file it's already in BIM 360. That's where Chris saved it to. I can just hit the save button, and now my civil engineering changes have been added and incorporated to the project to be used elsewhere. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Remy, and he's going to show us the Esri perspective of the integration. So Remy, take it away, please.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. So as Matt mentioned, GIS traditionally represents subs as simple features over a large geographic area. But with the release of the utility network, I can take advantage of our containment ability to see a higher resolution of details. Now, what's exciting to me as a former GIS supervisor for transmission, I used to have to convert to paper, or I would have a limited capability of consuming from BIM 360. But now we have BIM 360 adapters directly into our ArcGIS Pro, and we can consume that BIM directly into our operational models. And I can not only see the engineering, but I can configure my models to be able to explore how I would operationally deploy the substation. So for example, in this trace, I might isolate one of the transformers and breakers so that everything is feeding off of one transmission feed, and the second transmission feed would be used as a fallback. So from a GIS perspective, it's really exciting to have access to that integration and that design and be able to replicate and use those design features to see how they would operate in our systems analysis. So with that, back to you, Eric.
All right. Remy, if you could stop your screen share, I will one last time take over the share. All right, great. So with that, I want to just leave you with some final thoughts on what you've just seen. You know, Autodesk, Esri, and SBS, as you know, we all have our specialties and our industries of focus, but because we work together, you benefit. Through our partnerships, the integrations that we've built make it easy to complete tasks and move project data between platforms more easily. So I hope you found this session to be eye-opening and informative, and I hope you'll go out and explore the integrations that we've touched on today, as well as the many others that we didn't have time to show. I want to thank Matt and Remy, Dennis and Chris for participating in this presentation and this show of solidarity between our companies, which is really cool. It's not often you would see the three of us, you know, presenting in one session jointly. So this is really exciting, and I really enjoyed our time, you know, preparing for this session and just working with you. You've all been wonderful. For the rest of you, our contact information is on the screen, and if you'd like to reach out and ask more questions, feel free to do that. Thanks to all of you, and have a great conference. And with that, I believe I'll be turning it back to Janelle.
Yeah, so at this time, if you guys have any questions for any of the folks on the team, feel free to put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll give it a couple of minutes and see if anybody has any questions. So we do have one. What are the hardware specs to use these applications? It seems like a lot of imagery loaded, which could slow down our production.
Well, why don't we take turns on that? Remy, do you want to go first for your tools?
Sure. So the imagery in the base map data that was provided in the Esri demos are fed directly from Esri, but you do have the capability of providing on-premises imagery and other raster data. So for example, when I was in Southern Company, we had our LiDAR that we would overlay. It would be local on our on-premises servers, and a lot of times that was higher performance than using off-premises type imagery. So it really depends upon your workflow.
Chris, how about you go next?
Yeah, so as far as hardware specs for application, as you mentioned early on, our software is built on top of the Autodesk platforms. So really, as long as you meet the minimum spec requirements as recommended by Autodesk for the different platforms, you should have no worries.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just for everybody's reference, I included the online link to the Autodesk website for those hardware requirements. Now, those tend to be minimum requirements. We always recommend getting a little more oomph. You will get value out of more memory, obviously, better graphics cards, but that is kind of the starting base requirements there.
Yeah, and I'll second that from Autodesk perspective. Thanks for sharing that link. That's great information. I also second the idea of adding more power to your workstations. That's going to give you more value. And then I'll add to that from the BIM 360 standpoint. The opposite end of the spectrum. All you really need is a device connected to the internet with a browser. And if you're on a mobile device, we do have a BIM 360 app for iOS and Android, but also just a browser as well will give you access to data in a BIM 360 project. Any more questions pop up, Janelle?
Giving it a couple of seconds, but at the time, no.
Okay.
Last call for questions before we go into our first break. Any other questions from the audience? No. And if we have any other questions come in after the presentation, I'll be sure to filter it over to you guys. And if anybody on the call has any questions and needs to filter through me, I'm happy to facilitate. So thank you so much, Eric and Matt and Remy. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great day.